Viewers, moving on to Israel now. Times Now has been on ground zero, bringing detailed reports from the war zone. Times Now's Pradeep Datta was reporting from near the Gaza border when explosions from Hamas rockets were heard. Take a look at this report.
आप देख सकते हैं किस बहुत जबरदस्त तरीके से रॉकेट फायर हमने बहुत ज्यादा तेज धमाके की आवाज सुनाई दे रही है। हम इसमें बॉम्ब सेंटर में घुसते हुए बहुत ज्यादा धमाके आपको दिखाओगे कि जबरदस्त तरीके से हमने जैसे कि आपको पहले भी कहा क्योंकि लगातार उनकी कोशिश है कि यहाँ पे हालात खराब करने के लिए एक बार आपने देखोगे कितने जोर से रॉकेट यहाँ पे दागे जा रहे हैं क्योंकि ये इलाका बिल्कुल गाजा पट्टी के पास पड़ता है। और देखिए थोड़ी देर में पहले कितनी जबरदस्त आवाज आई होगी। ये लगातार निशाना टारगेट कर रहे हैं। हमने देखा है कि ये अक्टूबर 7 को शुरू हुआ था, सिलसिला अभी तक चल रहा है कि अगर हम इतने दिनों की बात करें 30,000 से ज्यादा रॉकेट दागे जा चुके हैं। They have fired more than 30,000 rockets. Let me show you the situation here. The situation continues to remain tense. Whenever the rocket is fired, the only option to save your life is to run towards the bomb shelter. Exactly the way we did the same thing. Those who were standing outside, they also moved towards the bomb shelter.
The explosion, but I'm not sure of what is the damage. Was there direct hit? Did you hear?
Yeah, there was a big explosion because normally we have seen that whenever there's a rocket is being fired, people move toward this bomb shelter. So how is the situation since October 7 you see?
The situation here is dire. We do not have a moment of quiet, and the bombardment also includes settlements that were completely evacuated.
Even as Israel prepares for a ground offensive in Gaza, what really are the military operations we're looking at, and why is it that the entire matter is so controversial? There's of course the humanitarian question, but there are several other factors for this possible ground offensive that make it an extremely risky proposition as far as Israel is concerned. To talk about that and other aspects of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Gaza, we have with us Major General Amos Yadlin, retired, who's in fact been the former head of military intelligence in Israel and also is the president and founder of Mind Israel Limited. Thank you so much, Major General Amos Yadlin, for joining us. Let me begin by asking you that Israel has warned Palestinians living in North Gaza to evacuate south, a warning that leaves more than 1 million people with the need to abandon their homes. This deadline has now elapsed. What's the underlying purpose and strategic objective of Israel's evacuation call for the entire population of northern Gaza, and how does it fit into the broader goals and tactics within the ongoing conflict with Hamas?
Thank you for asking. Israel was attacked brutally by a group of terror states that is in Gaza. It is both terror and state. Since Israel was attacked, thousands of citizens, women, children, elderly, citizens, innocent citizens were killed brutally by this group. Another 300 soldiers were fallen in the war, and Israel is in a state of war. When you are in a state of war against your enemy, you use whatever you need according to the international law to destroy your enemy. So, air campaign against anything that connected to Hamas, you ask the population, the civil population, to leave because the terrorists are hiding behind the human shield. So it's humanitarian effort to save the civilians and to fight against the terrorists at the beginning in the northern part of Gaza, but it may not be the end.
Right. Also, we've seen a lot of hectic diplomatic activity last few days. We've seen several top world leaders coming in there. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been there. We know that U.S. President Joe Biden is also expected in Israel. Now, given the fact that Israel's deadline is long over, is it because of the concerns related to the humanitarian, kind of fallout that could really happen if there is a ground offensive, that accounts for this delay? Is there something else in consideration in your view?
No, the main concern of the U.S. is the alliance of the devils that go from Russia to Iran to Syria to Hezbollah and then to Hamas. This is the excess of evil. and the US is leading a coalition of pragmatic democratic states, and in the center is Israel and the US. The US interest that the war will not expand. So they send aircraft carrier and a lot of weapons to the Western Mediterranean to make sure, to the Eastern Mediterranean, to try and deter Hezbollah and Iran from joining the war. The president supports Israel 100%. It's a just war, it's a moral war, and he's behind us. Israel don't need America for attacking Gaza. We can do it alone. The Americans asking us, and they don't have to ask us, that we will do it according to the international law. And if there is a humanitarian problem in Gaza, the address is the head of the gang, the head of the Hamas, which is Yahya Sinwar. He is holding American citizens, Israeli citizens, kids, 5, 7 years old, unbelievable. And if we want to help the population of Gaza, that by the way he doesn't care about, he should send all the children, the women, the elderly that need medicine, all the girls that were raped by these terrorists back to Israel immediately. And then the humanitarian corridor will be open.
Right, because that's the important point that many are making, that the recent, for instance, Israeli airstrikes on convoys of the Palestinian evacuees heading south in Gaza have resulted in deaths of 70 people. Now, these are also mostly women and children, and human rights organizations are up in arms, claiming that while they condemn what Hamas has done to women and children in Israel, the deaths of women and children in retaliatory Israeli airstrikes does not show Israel in positive light either. How do you respond to these charges coming in?
I have no knowledge of any Israeli targeting humanitarian convoy. This seems like a propaganda, false propaganda of Hamas. And this is an organization that posted on the social network the raping, the beheading of children, the killing of parents in front of their kids, and cutting the belly of pregnant women. This is an organization that I'm not buying any information that they are distributing in the world. Believe me, if you would see the video from the cameras on the forehead of the terrorists, you wouldn't sleep five years at night. It's awful. So I don't want to hear anything from Hamas. This organization should be destroyed the way that Nazi Germany was destroyed, the way that ISIS was destroyed, and this is for the sake of all the civilized democratic countries in the world, including India.
Right. If I can also ask you, sir, that what are the possibility that you look at in terms of, some kind of a regional conflict, because there are hostilities that appear to be there on multiple fronts, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, that has launched guided missiles at an Israeli tank and artillery fire from Syria. How well equipped do you think the Israeli Defense Forces are to handle this heightened level of conflict? And what are the potential implications of this multi-front situation for Israel and in the region?
Thank you again for a very, very important question. Israel was surprised, strategically surprised in the north. There was an intelligence failure, there was an operational failure, and Israel is in a leadership failure in the last 9 months. But now we are ready. And if Hezbollah want to join, the Israeli Air Force is ready to make Beirut look like Gaza. We just spoke about 1 million people that have to leave. Lebanon is a failed state anyway. If Nasrallah wants it to be also a destroyed state, he can go for it. Assad killed 5,000 500,000 of his people, 500,000. But he survived. If he think about attacking Israel, this is a promise. He will not survive 24 hours. So Israel deterrence is strong. The Americans are now with us trying to avoid escalation. I'm not telling you that it will not happen. Leaders are making mistakes. But in this case, I can promise you that the failure from 10 days ago will not return, and the all might of Israel will be, they will meet the might of Israel, and they will be defeated with heavy losses.
General Yadlin, there have been reports that have suggested a foreign involvement in this attack. Is there any concrete evidence available to Israel regarding the role of foreign entities, particularly Iran and Qatar, as claimed in supporting or orchestrating the armed assault by Hamas, because thus far it's been denied by those countries?
Yeah, I think the attack itself in the morning of the 7th of October was Hamas only operation. But the question is, who is financing Hamas? Who is supporting it with weapons? There was a lot of advanced Iranian weapons. So I cannot blame these countries for participating in the specific operation. However, their general support for Hamas is well known. And look, even Iran is Iran basically said that they are behind the attack and the barbaric killing of 1,000 citizens. Russia and China hardly denounce it. So there is a lot of countries that supported Hamas with weapons, with money, and we will discuss it after the.
Right. Also, the United States is deploying both military personnel and Navy ships to support Israel. How significant do you consider this assistance from Israel's allies, with a particular focus on the United States, and what role do you see the U.S. playing in this current situation?
The U.S. is an ally of Israel, strongest ally and very close ally, and sometimes the only ally. And the United States cares for Israel, cares for the future of the Middle East vis-a-vis Iran and its radical Islamist forces that try to take over the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen. The US, as you said, is the formidable military power in the world, as well as the only superpower that can project power to the Middle East very quickly. However, the Middle East, people are questioning the will of America to exercise this weapon. So if you multiply the power, military American capabilities with its willingness to operate, the number is not that high. However, this is exactly what President Biden promised us, that if Hezbollah and Iran will intervene, in this time, the US and America will be shoulder to shoulder, fighting together with the terrorist organization called Hezbollah and Iran, the nations that support him from behind.
Right. You mentioned a short while earlier that Hamas has taken over 100 Israeli citizens as hostages. What's the current status of these hostages taken by Hamas, and what role, if any, do you think countries like Saudi Arabia or UAE, with whom Israel has developed closer ties in the recent past, could play in negotiating for their release?
The negotiating is done in a back channels. I'm not going to discuss it on TV. I'm only pointing to the point that many of the hostages are with American, German, and foreign country passports. Many of them are kids and women, and some of them are wounded. And I'm reiterating what I already said. They have to bring them back as soon as possible if they want the humanitarian corridor to be open.
Right. Sir, in the past, when Gilad Shalit, an Israeli soldier, was abducted by Hamas, Israel had to release over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners over 5 years, corresponding to the duration of Shalit's captivity. Now, given the current situation with hundreds of Israeli hostages, what are your thoughts on the potential implications and challenges regarding any future exchange or negotiations for their release? Because there is a view that has been expressed by some that in exchange for them, all the Palestinian prisoners should be released. How do you view this?
I think this can be discussed at the end of the war, not before we destroy Hamas. Or let me say something else. Anything that you know about Gaza and the relation of Hamas with Israel is a paradigm that is now gone. Israel look at Hamas as a responsible organization that cares about the 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, and you can deter it and you can weaken it. This is not the case now. Israel is not going anymore to rely on Hamas deterrence. We are going to destroy it. And Shalit, I was against the Shalit deal. I thought it was a mistake. Many Israelis were killed because of Shalit. Senwar was released because of Shalit. This is the guy that sent the deadly attack that already killed many Israelis and many Gazans. So I'm against a deal with Hamas. I think we have to release our hostages the way we did it in the past.
Okay. So given your extensive experience in commanding various wartime situations, can you highlight what sets this particular attack apart from the others that you've encountered? We've seen already there's a lot of troops and tanks that have been mobilized at the borders with Gaza. How do you see this in a different view?
Once again, Israel was caught unprepared 10 days ago. Now the Israeli military starting with an Air Force campaign that drove, by the way, almost 6,000 bombs over Gaza. This is what the Americans drove in a year in Afghanistan. And then the army divisions are waiting to maneuver into Gaza. We haven't done it since 1982, and we not underestimate the possibilities that Hamas will resist. But this is time to deal Hamas the way the Allies deal with Germany. I already told it. The way the Allies dealt with ISIS in Iraq and Syria, 2014 to 2019. Nobody negotiated with Daesh. Nobody spoke about the humanitarian crisis in Mosul, Raqqa, and this is a war between two countries, and it's war for life and death.
Right. Also, sir, when Israel expresses its aim to neutralize the military capabilities of Hamas, what exactly does this encompass? Does it also include, for instance, the potential targeting or elimination of Hamas's leader, Madhav?
None of the Hamas leaders that planned and executed this operation should be alive at the end of the operation. And I don't want to add more.
Right. Also, sir, in light of recent events involving Israeli military actions and IDF responses, I'd like to get your perspective on the retaliatory measures taken in context of the blockade's effects on critical resources, food, fuel, water, considering the historical challenges to achieving lasting peace in this region. Do you think that there's a growing risk of a massive humanitarian crisis? Because even at the borders, there are questions about whether people are being boxed in to this entire region.
I think if we want peace, we have to prove that such an attack by Palestinians will never happen again. And the price that Hamas will pay for this attack will be huge. The price that the Palestinians will pay will be huge. Because the Palestinians have two schools of thought. There is the school of thought of the government in Ramallah. They want a Palestinian state, but they want to achieve it in negotiation. and they denounce terror. And those who are in Gaza, that not recognizing Israel, not recognizing any agreement between Israel and the PLO, and not denouncing terror, on the contrary, creating terror. This school of thought in the Palestinian people should be eradicated. And this can be achieved only by destroying Hamas, a siege on Gaza, everything according to the international law. And by the way, the Palestinians will lose territory. Israel is not going back to the 2005 line because we evacuated the whole Gaza Strip and we dismantled all the settlement. And instead of building Singapore there, Abu Dhabi there, they built a terror state. And we are not going to let them have armed military in Gaza that can do again what they did 10 days ago. It is not going to happen. Everything we thought, every paradigm on the relation between Israel and Hamas is now gone. New paradigms.
Right. So when you mention new paradigms, would you also go back on your earlier statement where you have mentioned that Israel would welcome a Modi miracle in the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict? Because what role do you think or actions do you believe that Prime Minister Modi could play in mediating a peace, or is that something that's off the table for the moment? What kind of approach or role do you envision for India in this context?
I think India is a democracy and it's a superpower and it has a lot of influence. But let me share with you, I think even Almighty will be unable to have peace between Israel and the Palestinians at that stage, maybe in the future. But your Prime Minister can help with the humanitarian deal. The humanitarian deal, the release of all the children, 5, 6 years old, all the women, all the elderly that need their medicine, and then open a humanitarian corridor to Gaza. This is something that personality like Modi, who is the highest regard all over the world, they can do.
All right, sir. I'd like to thank you so much, Major General Amos Yadlin, for joining us and sharing with us your perspective. And we certainly hope that peace and justice prevail at the earliest in Israel.
The News Hour at 10 will be right back after the break.